Okay.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking about the French Revolution. We're going to review what happened, and afterwards we're going to play a review game to just make sure that you guys understood what we talked about. So for the French Revolution, France had a systemic problem collecting taxes, and the people with the money, so the nobility and the clergy, never really paid their taxes, and France was in debt due to helping fund the American Revolution, but also their involvement in the 7 Years' War. And King Louis XVI tried to have many ways to try to fix this, but all of his attempts failed. During this time, the people were also starving, and the king and the nobility were eating really well. So there was this huge disparity in where the food was going. And now the Enlightenment thinkers were questioning the divine right theory because they were wondering why a king would be living so lavishly when his people were starving. So because of the financial crisis, Louis XVI called a meeting of the States General to find a solution to the financial crisis France was facing. There are 3 estates, so the first is the Catholic clergy, the second is the nobility, and the third is everyone else. So during this meeting, they were talking about how to tax people, what was going to go on. And within the States General, each group only gets 1 vote. So each one gets a vote and the majority wins. And this was unfair because the third estate had the most massive population, yet they never had their voice heard because their vote didn't really count because they could never outvote the clergy and nobility who always voted together. So this meeting lasted a few days. And one of the days, the third estate got locked out of the room, and they decided to break into the tennis court, which was a different room within the palace where they were meeting, and they had the tennis court oath. This is where they swore to not leave this room until constitutional reform had been achieved. So then, later on, King Louis sent troops to Paris to stop uprisings due to food shortages, but people saw this as an attack on them in the revolution that they were having. So the revolutionaries decided to storm the Bastille. They did this so they could release prisoners and take out weapons. The Bastille is an important place that they stormed because it's a symbol to the people of France representing years of abuse by the monarchy. So this happened on July 14th, 1789, and on August 4th, the revolutionaries abolished the ancient regime, saying that they were no longer going to follow the old ways, and on August 26th, they created the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. This laid out a system to give all men rights and said that their rights were integral to the new Constitution. It also declared that everyone had the right to liberty, property, and security. Then by October of 1789, there were rumors starting that Marie Antoinette was hoarding grain inside the palace. So a bunch of angry peasant women decided to storm the palace, and when they were there, they saw that there wasn't any grain, but they were so angry at what Louis and Marie were doing, they demanded that they move to Paris from Versailles, and Versailles is where their palace was. This is called the Women's March. So there was this question of what was going on, if there was a demand for a completely new government system, if they were going to stay the same or do something in between. And most revolutionaries at this time were fine with having a constitutional monarchy. They thought that they needed Louis to still have a functioning government, so they were okay with originally creating a constitutional monarchy. Only the Jacobins were the ones who wanted to overthrow the government completely, and they wanted to create a republic instead of having a constitutional monarchy. The Jacobins had a huge petition riot against the idea of a constitutional monarchy, and it got very unruly, which led to troops controlled by the National Assembly, who was supposed to be the voice of the third estate and all the average people. That group of troops fired on the crowd and killed 50 people. This action showed that the National Assembly, which was meant to be the voice of the people, killed revolutionaries to rein them in. So people then saw him as trying to rein in the whole revolution and not go as far as the people wanted. Then Louis and Marie tried to free Paris, but failed. So they stopped in Versailles after they were recognized, and their plan failed for a few reasons. First, they interacted with locals. Second, Louis thought the people liked him. And third, Louis expected those he interacted with to be loyal. When he interacted with locals, at first he thought that they weren't going to recognize him or Marie, but what he didn't really remember is that his face is kind of everywhere. There's paintings of him, he's sometimes on currency, like there's just a general knowledge of what he and Marie look like due to them being the king and queen of that country. Also, he thought that everybody liked him and there was no reason for people not to like him, which through the revolution, through what you've heard already, is kind of untrue. People were very upset with what he was doing. And he also expected them to be loyal because they were his subjects, which was not true because they didn't like what he was doing and they wanted a change. So, they were caught and then sent back to Paris. And then this was in 1791, the whole fling. And then in 1792, King Louis and the National Assembly created a plan to invade Austria. The Assembly decided to do this because they wanted to spread revolutionary zeal, whereas King Louis joined because he wanted to either gain more power within the National Assembly or be rescued by Austria. Then Prussia decided to join Austria and fight with them and go against the French. So, the important part about this war starting was it led to a flood of volunteers to fight and awaken the French nationalism within the people because they felt really like they band together and felt like they were fighting for a common cause, and it brought them all together. During this war, there was a creation of a new assembly. It's called the National Convention. And during the war, they decided to vote to suspend the monarchy and have new elections where all men could vote and create a new Republican constitution. As this went on, the convention decided to send King Louis to death. They voted on it and it passed by one vote, and he was executed via guillotine in 1793. And the guillotine was used for almost all executions at this time because it was thought to be the most humane way to kill somebody. So then the Reign of Terror started right after this, and it lasted 1 year, 1793 to 1794. It was the most radical time of the French Revolution. Maximilien Robespierre was in charge during this time. He was one of the main revolutionary leaders during the earlier parts of the French Revolution, and he took this time to become the new leader. During the Reign of Terror, 40,000 people were executed via guillotine. This included killing revolutionary leaders who were partners with Maximilien Robespierre because he was afraid of being overthrown, and anyone else who disagreed with them. They also killed Mary via guillotine during this time, 9 months after they killed Louis. The Reign of Terror also promoted the cult of reason, and the cult of reason promoted secular alternatives to many things in daily lives to remove religion from them. So this included renaming all the months, creating 10-hour days, saying every hour had 100 minutes in it, and creating the weekday 10 days long. But no one followed this because it didn't really make sense to change everything about life when people didn't really see the hour as extremely religious, but also having these new ideas not match up with any other country made it very difficult. The war with Prussia was still going on, and it was finally won due to the guidance of Napoleon Bonaparte. So in 1799, Napoleon was deemed the first consul of France. This year marks the end of the French Revolution, and it's also important to note that this title gave him almost unlimited executive power. So Napoleon Bonaparte, he was a French army officer, and he declared himself emperor in 1804. And when he did this, he created this thing called the Napoleonic Code. This declared that all men are equal under the law, only men specifically. It created a merit-based society, And it created a patriarchal social structure. So all power went to men, and men basically owned women and children. This actually became the model for civic codes in many other countries during this time. When he crowned himself emperor, he did not support free speech or representative government. And due to him, nationalism takes off because of militarism. As an army officer, he was really into militarism and saying that having a large military and using it is going to make our country big and strong, and that's what pushed nationalism. So by 1812, he controlled almost all of Western Europe, and then he makes the fatal mistake of deciding that he wants to conquer Russia. So he decides to conquer Russia during the winter, which is a very bad mistake, because all of you know how cold Russia is and how much snow, and he just was not prepared whatsoever. So only 10% of his troops survived. This gave other countries the ability to take back their countries from his control, and later on he was exiled to an island. So that's the end of our little review of what the French Revolution is. We're going to move to the game now. So if you guys want to split up into 2 teams, so I think there's 9 of you, so if you want 4 on one team and 5 on the other, that'd be great, and you go in 2 different spots. If you want to move right now, that'd be great. Okay. Okay. So you're in your 2 teams now?
We got winners right here.
Perfect. So Kyle, do you want to come up and be my volunteer real fast? Okay, if you want to sit in that chair. So what you're going to do for each round, there's 2 rounds, you're going to send up 2 representatives. What's going to happen is there's going to be words that come up on the screen, and this chair is able to look at it. They are going to describe the word up there without rhyming, without saying it starts with whatever, and the person sitting in this chair has to guess what the word is within 20 seconds. I'm going to keep track of points. While one team is going, the other team will send out 2 representatives outside because we're going to reuse those same words. And then we're going to go for 2 rounds and we'll review the words that we talked about. Does that make sense? Okay, perfect. Since he's up here, do you want to send up one more person to play? Your team. It's easy, don't worry. It's reviewing what we just talked about. And do you guys want to send out 2 representatives outside? Perfect.
But we just get to watch for now.
Okay, and you guys get to watch, and then the next round.
So I'm not supposed to be facing this way, right?
You're supposed to face it, so you're going to describe the word that shows up, but without saying what the word is or words within it. Okay. So I'll keep track of your points. Ready?
Okay, so he is the ruler at the time where all of the really bad stuff is happening.
Yes, you got it. Okay.
This is the group of people who were supposed to represent all of the common people, but they didn't because they ended up firing at them. It's kind of like a word for a group of people, and it also has like a general patriotic like name.
Okay. Next.
No.
Next word.
This is the girl that everyone's always saying that she says, "Let them eat cake." You know. She's the, yeah.
Okay.
This is the one that's full of the nobility. There's the 3. No, it's another one. Just keep guessing, you'll get there.
The 3rd class.
No, it's another one.
2nd class.
There you go, sort of. Okay, it's not class though. You know the names? It's like,
Yeah, I was definitely.
Okay, next.
this is the guy that just cuts off everybody's heads with a guillotine. Yeah.
Yes.
This is the,
Oh, it's a state.
yeah.
Okay, got it.
This is one of them. It's the one with the Catholic clergy members.
That was first.
There you go.
Yes. Good job. Okay.
Wow.
You guys can sit down. Do you want to bring all the other groups to come in? So you guys got 4 points.
It's time to come in, friends.
Oh shoot, hold up.
Close your eyes.
It's frozen, hold up.
Still on there.
Almost good. Okay, we're good. The button didn't work. I was like very scared for a second. Okay,
Okay, so it's good.
you guys ready?
I guess.
Okay.
France leader,
Bonaparte. Robespierre.
Regal.
Louis the 16th.
Yes.
Constitution group assemble.
Oh. Next one.
Let them eat cake.
Marie
Yeah.
Nobles.
State.
Not first, but
Second.
past. Church. Second, not second, but hierarchy.
Oh, the priests.
Okay. So now we'll go through the terms. You guys are good. You got 3 points. The other team has 4 right now. So we'll go through these, play the second round, and then we'll decide who the winner is. So King Louis the 16th, you all got that correct. He was the king during the French Revolution who was eventually executed via guillotine. National Assembly. So this is the group that the third estate, this is the name that they changed to.
Tyrant, however.
So this is the group, the National Assembly, originally the third estate, but then they changed because they started firing on revolutionaries and kind of reining them in. Then you have Marie Antoinette. You all got, she was the queen. She did not say let them eat cake, but that's what everybody thinks she says. The second estate. So this is the nobility. And then Robespierre was the guy in charge of the Reign of Terror who executed 40,000 people. And then the first estate was the Catholic clergy. So perfect. If Team 1, you want to send 2 more people up to play. So the team that went first, if you 2 want to go outside, that'd be great. Okay.
Do you want to guess? You feel like you're really close.
Okay. Ready? Ready? Set. Go.
Not the first or the
The
second.
third estate.
Yes.
The little crazy guy, power trip, French.
Power trip.
His set of rules, laws that he created.
Constitution.
Has his name in it.
Louis.
No, the
No?
little.
Bonaparte. Napoleon.
Mhm.
Commission.
The most intense year of the French Revolution, where a lot of people died.
1790.
No, what the name of the year, where a lot of people died.
Reign of Terror.
It's like a set of beliefs that people didn't want to follow, like there's 10 days in 1 week, there's.
Oh, the cult of reason.
Yeah. The place where they stormed.
That's Steve.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Awesome.
Good one.
If you want to grab the other.
Wait. What a team.
Okay, now we got it. We'll work that time. Okay.
It's like not educational.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Let's do this.
Okay, this is the group that had all the people that later became the National Assembly. The third estate, yes. This is the guy that had the code. Napoleon. Yes. This, what I literally just said. Napoleonic Code. Yeah. This is what Maximilian Robespierre's rule was called.
Reign of Terror.
This is, oh gosh, what was after Maximilian Robespierre? This is like, it's true womanhood, but it's a way different, way different thing.
Ideals
Oh my
movement
God.
in the Napoleonic Code.
No.
Patri-
Oh my
patriarchy.
gosh. No. Oh, they stormed this.
The Women's March, Bastille. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good job. Okay, that's the last term.
Cult of Reason.
Oh, Cult of Reason.
I was thinking of Cult of True Woman.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll
stupid
go
10-hour
through the
days.
words
I
just to
know.
review them once more. So T1, you won by 1 point. You had 9. Team 2, you had 8. Very close. So the third estate, you guys were all correct. This is the estate that represented everybody but the nobility and the clergy. Napoleon Bonaparte. Yes, the crazy little guy. He was the army officer who then crowned himself emperor, created the Napoleonic Code. All of that. The Napoleonic Code, it was the set of rules created by Napoleon that gave all power to men, declared equality of men under the law, and created a merit-based society. The Reign of Terror was the most terrible, the most revolutionary year of the French Revolution. 40,000 people were executed, and it was led by Maximilian Robespierre. The Cult of Reason, this was the group that had the secular alternatives to daily, things in daily lives that were seen as too religious. So switching all the month names, creating 10-day weeks, 10-hour days, those kinds of things. And then you are all correct with this as well. This is what the revolutionaries stormed, the Bastille. They stormed it to break out prisoners and grab weapons. So that is it. Do you guys have any questions at all about anything we talked about, what we learned, any terms you didn't understand? Very good.
Could you explain
Yes.
about bourgeoisie term? What's the
Yes.
relationship with bourgeoisie with the French Revolution?
Yes, of course. So the bourgeoisie was within the third estate, but they kind of were the outliers within the third estate because they were rich and kind of associated more with the nobility and the clergy because of the amount of wealth that they had. And during the war that they had against Austria, many of the bourgeoisie actually fled to Austria and Prussia to escape because they thought they could live the lives they wanted to lead as more of a upper class, wealthy person in those countries than they could in France.
Thank you.
Thank you.